My Lords, I too warmly welcome this debate as a member of the committee which produced the report, and want to pay tribute to Baroness Parmenter for her introduction to the debate and her very careful, wise and gracious and patient leadership of the committee in its first 3 years. My Lords, my experience of serving on the ECC committee across the 3 years was that each of the challenges we addressed proved to be more significant and also much more complex than we first appreciated. It was a tremendous learning curve that each issue had multiple questions and problems associated with it and needed complex solutions. And that was clearly the case with the EV report before the House today. Some very good work has been done by the previous government, by manufacturers, by local authorities, but much more needs to be done, and urgently, to keep this transition on track. And I would highlight that need for urgency in the transition. As Baroness Jones has just said, the effects of climate change across the world are accelerating, as all of us in this chamber will recognise, often affecting those who have least, who are least resilient, and whose emissions in the present and in the past have been lowest across the world. Surface transport is the UK's highest emitting sector, with passenger cars responsible for over half the sector's emissions. And the new government surely needs to do all it can to accelerate the transition alongside the vital transition to renewable energy. So what does our new government intend to do? The Labour manifesto for the general election mentions 3 key steps: accelerating the rollout of charge points, restoring the phase-out date of 2030 for new cars with internal combustion engines, and supporting buyers of second-hand electric cars by standardising information. The second-hand car market is key and complex. These are welcome steps, and I'd ask the Minister, as others have done, to comment on when we'll see action on each of these points. However, as I'm sure the Minister will recognise, and as the report makes clear, the steps are not enough by themselves. So can I ask for a response and for action on 2 further areas? The first, echoing other noble lords, is to ask what the government will do to ensure that the transition to EVs is as part of the transition to net zero is a fair transition. I commend that word fair to the government, if I may. It doesn't feature in this part of the manifesto. In particular, how will the government ensure parity of pricing and taxation for those able to charge their EVs at home and those who need to use a commercial charging service? As has been said, 40% of the country will not have access to a home charge point. And there is at present no viable solution to ensure parity, and I agree that our committee was not able to offer one. But it will need some radical and imaginative thinking. And how will the government address this key question of fairness? And second, how will the government lead and encourage the transition to EVs through better communication and coordination across government? The committee conducted its inquiry through a period when actually the government was rowing back from previous commitments and sending very mixed messages to the markets, to manufacturers and consumers. We are, I think, still waiting for a sense of how the new government will respond in terms of encouragement, incentivisation, accurate information and coordination of policy goals and delivery. What task force or structures will the government put in place to ensure this for the future? My Lords, the transition to EVs is a potential revolution in our road transport, our economy and in public health over the next decade. How will the government rapidly recharge this sector into the future?